and welcome to the second. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the second PHAAE sponsored WASH, Water and Sanitary Health webinar debate. PHAAE, Public Health Aid and Awareness and Education, is a non-governmental organisation founded by Ms. Uchechia Konma. The aim of PHAAE is to close the inequality gap that exists in access to water, hygiene and other basic resources. The theme of this year's webinar is Building Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Resilience, Insights from the COVID-19 Pandemic. I'm Mike Southcombe. I'm the Environmental Protection Manager at City of York Council in the UK, and I'll be your host, chair and moderator for the meeting. We've got a great range of speakers for you, which I hope you'll find to be both interesting and informative. The format for the webinar will be that each speaker will present for between 10 and 15 minutes. At the end of the presentations, there'll be a short time for questions from the audience. Due to time pressures, please put your question together with your name in the chat function. If you wish to remain anonymous, I can read your questions out, and please state if your question is to a particular member of a panel or to all the panel in general. We've now got less than 1.5 hours to get through and a lot to talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. And our first speaker is Ms. Rifakatu Joseph Odiyemi. Ms. Odiyemi will be speaking on the impact of climate change on water sources and sanitation. Over to you, Rifi.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, please?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you. It's good to meet everyone on the call today. So because of our time, I'll just go straight into my topic, the impact of climate change on water sources and sanitation. That'll be it. So when we start talking about climate change, we'll first talk about what exactly is climate change? What is it? Why is there a lot of noise, a lot of talk about climate change in relationship to almost everything, health impact, gender, because yesterday we had a workshop and a seminar on climate change in relationship to gender, then celebrating the International Women's Day, actually. And then today there's a seminar on maternal health care and the relationships with climate change. So there's a lot about climate change going on here and there. But basically, climate change is basically referred to long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. And then the United Nations says it is primarily caused by human activities. So I think we usually go with that definition. But then I'm relating it with water sources and sanitation. But then we know basically the sources of water, surface water, groundwater, rainwater, snow, ice, a whole lot of them, spring, rivers, and all of that. But then I am going to be more focused on my field, which is climate change. And then we're going to be talking basically impact of climate change on WASH. And then basically, okay, if we know a problem, then the next thing is, what is the solution? What do we need to do moving forward? So I'll just read it. Okay, increasing global temperatures are, as we know, rising global temperatures everywhere in the world. And that is the main contributor to the problem we have with climate change. So increasing global temperature causes water to evaporate in large amounts, and that leads to higher levels of atmospheric water vapor and more frequent, heavy and intense rain, especially in the coming years. So climate change actually impacts the water cycle, influencing where water goes and how much precipitation falls. So we can see that climate change is primarily a water crisis. Primarily a water crisis. A survey says 90% water crisis, one of the articles that is available. But then it causes extreme weather events. We know extreme weather events, floods, droughts, shrinking of ice fields, and rising sea levels. Those are the most impactful extreme weather events that come up every time we talk about climate change. Then you know that we've said it, water and climate change are very, very interconnected. So it makes water basically three things: more scarce, more unpredictable, and more polluted. And we know water scarcity is a very, very big problem. Water pollution also impacts the health, the environment, and every other thing. And since when water becomes such events become unpredictable, we can't even forecast when the weather is. All of our meteorologists will have to do extra work because they need to know this water, when is it even going to, okay, before now we had projections, we can project that, okay, this, but right now the climate crisis is causing that even the weather is unpredictable. Today is cold, tomorrow is hot. Right now, Nigeria is extremely hot. Somebody just called me a few minutes ago and was like, please, what can we do about the sun? You're in the climate space. I was like, yes, it's good that everybody is. I was like, there's really nothing we can do about the sun, but we'll talk. Maybe you should just book a session, then you know what to do about the sun. But every day I get such questions, and it's becoming worse. And we just pray that we'll get a lasting solution. And truthfully, the solution lies with all of us. It lies with all of us. So some of the impacts, like we said, flooding and rising sea levels can contaminate land and water sources. Linking it up now with water sources, it can contaminate it with fecal matter, and then causes damage to water and sanitation infrastructure, such as water points, wells, toilets, wastewater treatment facilities, and all of that. The glaciers, ice caps, and snow fields are rapidly disappearing. They are rapidly disappearing. If I was using my slides, we have data, we have pictures and diagrams showing before and after and the effects that we are already going through. So all of that, it affects our river systems, droughts. One of the Senate members in Nigeria was making was giving a lecture, I think, on climate change. And it was like in his hometown where he grew up as a boy, they had 6 lakes, they had 6 rivers. They would usually go fetch water and all of that. But he went to the village recently and 4 of them have dried up. 4 of that, and that is a major source of water for that community. So we can see that climate change is really, really affecting the water sources that we have. But then let's look at the impacts of climate change on WASH and all of that. So I'll say extreme weather events and changes in water cycle patterns are making it more difficult to access safe drinking water. And we know that is especially for vulnerable children. We are very particular about children and women when it comes to the climate crisis. And so extreme weather events has that kind of effect. And it's estimated that around 436 million children live in areas of high or extremely high water vulnerability, which is a combination of water scarcity and low levels of drinking water. I think because of time, I'll just go over some of the. Then only 0.5% of water on Earth is usable and available fresh water. And climate change is dangerously affecting that supply. So over the past 20 years, terrestrial water storage, including soil moisture, snow, and ice, has dropped at a rate of 1 centimeter per year, with major ramifications of water security. So with all of this, and then, okay, then coming back to extreme weather events, 74% of natural disasters between 2001 and 2018 were water related, especially droughts and floods. So the frequency and intensity of such are only expected to increase with climate change. So as climate change increases, all of these extreme weather conditions are going to increase. So the earlier we wake up to do something about the climate crisis, the best for all of us. And then when disasters hit, they destroy and contaminate entire water supplies, risking diseases. So we're bringing the health impact now, the hygiene into it. And then rising temperatures too can lead to deadly pathogens in fresh waters. When we talk about fertilizers running off into the lakes, it causes algal bloom. And then the algal bloom diminishes the oxygen that is being supplied in the water and then leads to the production of toxins. And unfortunately, most of those toxins cannot be eliminated by the process of purification. So, and that in itself is very, very detrimental to our health. A lot of that. Then the climate change exacerbates water stress. The ratio of total water demand to available water resources. It leads to increased competition for water, even conflict. So let it not get to a point that because of water, we're going to have a major conflict in the world. It's not going to be a good one. So then let's briefly look at the way forward, because I'm looking at my time also. What is the way forward? So number one, I think assessing the risks, because when we know what the gravity of the risks involved, I think we'll wake up. Because if they tell you, okay, don't eat this, don't eat red meat, you might just be, oh, I love red meat, I love, but when they tell you this and this and this is what it will do to you, I'm very sure you'll be like, okay, I love sugar a lot. So I always pray, Lord, let nothing come that will give me that, nothing. Let no doctor tell me that, please don't go near sugar because it won't be good. So when we assess such risks, then we know the way forward. So identifying the risks is a very, very fundamental step in the way forward. Then education and capacity building. Education. My work is basically education, climate change education. Basically, that's what I do, and advocacy. So I tell people that if you don't know that something exists, you will not even have any business to do with it. If you don't know that there's something, how will you even know what to do about it? So we need to do a lot of education, capacity building, develop courses, online, offline, develop trainings, and then make sure that the government inculcates some of this into the school curriculum. Because in Nigeria, after the COP28, I heard that the government has instructed schools to add climate change, climate education into their curriculum. But I can tell you from all of the schools I've been to, that has not been done. So it's one thing saying it is, and it's another thing it's been implemented. But we hope in the coming days it's going to get better. And then we can establish environment clubs in school. That's something I'm working on presently, so that students will get more conscious about the environment, and then we inculcate, okay, your environment in relationship with WASH, your environment relationship to public health, your environment relationship to every other thing. So when they know this, they themselves will become advocates. They will educate their communities, and then I believe the future of the world lies on especially the young generation. So the earlier we start educating them, because a lot of us didn't have this education, we didn't have this knowledge growing up. I tell people that if I knew better, I will do better. So it's like that. So if we try to get them to know these things better, I'm sure that they will act better. Then advocacy, I mentioned that in passing, and youth engagement, sensitization, seminars, workshops, influencing policymakers to go a long way. Working with government and stakeholders to highlight the impact of climate change on children, community, and WASH services, and also to ensure that climate change is included in key national policy and climate documents, and ensuring WASH infrastructure and services are sustainable, safe, and resilient. I don't have much time. I will have talked about sustainability, because that is what I am very, very interested in right now. Sustainability and circular economy. So we have to start thinking sustainable, everything we do, we should start putting that sustainability at the forefront of our decisions, because it's very, very important. And then I talked about implementing solutions. Implementation is actually a very big challenge. Implementation, we have a lot of documents on paper, we have a lot of ideas, a lot of stuff on paper, but seeing it, in short, it's even better where you're coming from. But where we are coming, where I am right now, we just hear a lot of this and a lot of money is being spent for implementation. But we believe in the coming days, when we raise up our voices, a lot of things will start going on in that direction. Thank you very much. I think I'll stop here for now.
Thank you. You've just saved me an interruption. Thank you very much, Riffy. It's so interesting to hear that a lot of the issues facing Nigeria, and I'm sure various other countries around the world, are the same issues that we're trying to deal with in the UK. Maybe different tactics and things, but such a vital subject for all of us. So thank you very much. And please, if you've got any questions to Riffy, please put them in the chat, or make sure you write them down so you can remember at the end of the seminar. So I'm going to move on to our second speaker, and our second speaker is Prince Mekwunmi Kidachukwu. Mr. Kidachukwu will be speaking about involving communities in WASH planning and implementation while strengthening community resilience through education. So thank you, Prince. Over to yourself.
Good afternoon, and happy International World Water Day. I hope I am audible.
You're fine. Please carry on.
Okay, thank you. So I'm here to speak about community engagement in WASH facility management. So in Nigeria, I would like to break down our WASH facilities in the different kinds or types. So apologies, I would have shared my screen, but my laptop is malfunctioning, so I'm using the phone. So we have the hand pump water scheme, we have the motorized electric water scheme, we have the motorized solar water scheme, and we have the motorized hybrid, the one that runs on both electric solar, and we have the dams and treated water schemes in Nigeria. So these are the major water schemes we have in Nigeria. So for sustainable water scheme in Nigeria, I developed some steps to consider before setting up a WASH facility in Nigeria. So number one, we have to have a good understanding of the culture and attitude of the beneficiary community. We have to understand the attitude and we have to understand the attitude of the people towards WASH facilities. We have to understand the population density of the people of the community, especially the age brackets, the gender distribution, and we also need to have a knowledge of the economic activities of the people, the water budget of the people, then the power source to enable us design efficient and sustainable water scheme, and also the knowledge of the economy of the people to know if they can buy into the commercial aspect of water scheme, or they will have the free water scheme more sustainable. Then we also have to look at the readiness of the community to take ownership of a water scheme. So the hand pump water scheme, it's manually operated and requires human energy for pumping. The production is limited, so it can only serve a very small population density, and it's only efficient in very shallow aquifer. When the aquifer gets deep, hand pumps are not sustainable, and the technicalities in maintenance is low, and it's like I said, it's only ideal for low density areas. Then the motorized electric boreholes is powered by electricity. We have a borehole that have a submersible pump which is powered by electricity, and a reservoir is provided so that they can pump with electricity and store in the reservoir before distributing to the public. It's ideal for more densely populated area, but is subject to power supply and also accessibility to petrol where generator is being used. But we have a little bit modernized one, which is the solar water scheme. That's it's almost like the electric water scheme, but the difference now is that the source of power for the running of the submersible pump is solely from the solar panels. So its maintenance is low and is more sustainable and zero operation cost. Then we have the hybrid system, because in Nigeria, in some parts of Nigeria, we have problems of weather, especially in rainy season. So when the weather is bad, the solar could not operate efficiently. So in this aspect, we introduced the hybrid system that can run on electricity and also run on solar when the weather is bad. It's a little bit more technical, it's more efficient, but more expensive to set up. So we have the treated water that is also more adopted in towns and cities where raw water is collected from dams or from industrial boreholes, and stored, treated, and transmitted to the end users through pipelines And this scheme is more efficient for commercial activities for large population areas, but it's more expensive and it's always commercialized because it cannot run on a free system. So, but in all these water schemes I've just listed, we noticed that in Nigeria, more than 80% of our water schemes have been abandoned due to poor maintenance and management models. So we had gone into these communities to find out what could be the problem, why projects are abandoned even when new ones are implemented. They keep experiencing abandoned projects. So we came up with the problem of ownership of wash facilities. So communities don't take ownership of wash facilities. They have this idea that, oh, it's provided by the government. Whenever it goes bad, we have to go to the government again to come and fix it. And the government doesn't have the capacity. And oftentimes, government doesn't even have the knowledge that the facility provided has already been abandoned and dysfunctional. So we developed some models to make the community co-own water projects, apart from owning them, to teach them in minor management and maintenance models so they can own and maintain these facilities better. So one of our models was to connect, first of all, in Nigeria, you have to understand the leadership models of each community where you want to set up your water project. Some areas have the traditional leadership system, the political system, or the religious system. So you have to bring up a model that will suit whatever political leadership of the community. If not, projects will fail. So we came up with a scheme to manage the free water projects in communities. So what we designed was to connect the three key stakeholders in the community directly from the water scheme. So in most of these communities, we have the community leader who could be a traditional ruler, a religious ruler, or a political leader. Then the youth leader and the women leader. So from this water scheme, we connect to the houses direct from the same line that goes to the public. So this has generated very good results for our schemes, because what happened is these three-tier leaders of the community have enjoyed water infrastructure directly into their homes, so they never want to experience any outage in water supply. So whenever there's any slight malfunctioning of the scheme, you see them coming up with either finances or models to fix them. So that has worked very well in managing wash systems for us. Then another system we developed was to set up wash committees in communities where water infrastructures have been installed. We identify little knowledgeable people, maybe 2 or 3 persons in the community, train them on maintenance of wash facilities and equip them with a tool or a wash maintenance tool kit, a box, which is used for the maintenance of the water infrastructure. This has also proved very productive in very rural areas where response to maintenance is always very slow. And in Katsina State, for example, we've been able to introduce the wash committees to the local government headquarters, which have a wash officer. So in situations where the problems is too much for the wash committee in the locality to handle, they will have to contact the wash officer in the local government, who will give them a more robust assistance. So this has worked efficiently for the free water scheme. But also we came to understand that in some rural communities where the economy is bad, the economy is not really very good, when they need to raise money for replacement of broken parts of water scheme, it becomes a problem. So we designed another water scheme that involved us building a solar-powered kiosk. So the solar-powered kiosk brings in a little bit of commerce into the water scheme. in every community, there must be an enterprising youth, woman, or a man who is handed over the solar kiosk. In the solar kiosk, he engages in charging of phones, charging of touch lights, and he charges people few money to raise income, after which a percentage of the income is saved in the community purse for the maintenance of the water infrastructure. Our pilot scheme, which started 6 years ago in Gada local government in Sokoto State, as at last year, the community has over $1,000 in their account, which they have saved, and they have been able to use it to install another solar power in one abandoned borehole in the community. So the community have not only maintained the existing infrastructure, but they've been able to improve.
I think we might have temporarily lost our speaker, but it's time to conclude anyway. Just like to thank him for some really interesting insights.
Hello.
Hi, we lost you temporarily, but I was just saying it's time to sort of draw your section to a conclusion. Was there anything else important you wanted to particularly conclude
with? I'll round up with the So I'll round up with the public water scheme, which we are encouraging the government to actually look into and not lay much heavy burden on the boreholes, because our groundwater in Nigeria is actually experiencing a lot of abstraction. So the public water scheme has not been successful because of the commercial system, the metering system. People don't pay for the services because the metering system has been analog. So recently, we've been able to encourage the government and the managers of these infrastructures to embrace the smart metering system so that people will pay for what they use. So with these models we've introduced, we've experienced better wash management system in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's some real practical insights there on some of the difficulties in working with communities and identifying the right people to be working with to take responsibility for some of these schemes. So thank you very much. And if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat or be prepared to ask them at the end. So I'm going to move on to our third speaker, and our third speaker today is Dr. Nanda Neha. Dr. Nanda will be speaking about mitigating infectious diseases through improved wash practices, and we'll consider some case studies illustrating the impact of improved wash on preventing and controlling infectious diseases. Over to you, Dr. Nanda.
Thank you, Mike. I'll try and share my slides, some of them, just to make to deliver my points across. Let me try. Share screen. Okay, can my screen be seen?
Yeah, that looks fine. Please continue.
Okay. So thank you so much, Mike. I'm going to talk about, I think it's the same messaging that Mike was talking about. And also, just as we've dealt with the pandemic, I'd love to share with all of you some of the case studies and really our learnings from the pandemic and how we can leverage these as we think about WASH and pandemic preparedness. I think the first lesson is that WASH is central to any pandemic preparedness plan, without a doubt. And I think this audience is very well versed with the fact that where there are effective WASH programs, the morbidity and mortality is dramatically lower. Exactly for this reason, that WASH programs can help in preventing disease transmission, whether it's an endemic setting or a pandemic setting. And, you know, you talk about all types of infections. One of the key infections that we talk about that we can prevent is respiratory infections, COVID-19 also being a respiratory illness. And it's been shown in multiple case studies, randomized studies, that effective WASH programs in the community can have a huge impact. So what you see on the slide here are two studies. On the left-hand side, it was done in Cairo, and on the right-hand side, the study was conducted in Bangladesh in schools. And what the group showed was effective WASH programs truly reduce illness, especially like influenza-like illnesses. So on the left-hand side, which was done in Cairo, they had two groups. Each group had 30 schools. And they implemented, one school actually had no access to water and soap. Another school, they gave it access to water and soap. And not surprisingly, over a period of 8 to 10 months, what they saw was the illnesses were 40% lower in the group that actually had access to water and soap. And if you really see the impact of it, the highest impact was with conjunctivitis. That's like this infection of the eye. There was a 60% difference. And when you look at influenza-like illnesses, the difference was 40%. That's huge. Similarly, in Bangladesh, they had two groups again. There were 15 schools in each group. And in one school, they installed alcohol-based hand rub, and they introduced, as someone mentioned, respiratory hygiene and hand hygiene in the curriculum of the students. And they noticed a dramatic improvement over a period of 8 months. They had a 20% reduction in influenza-like illnesses in the group where they had access to this. And when you look at the lab-confirmed influenza illness, there was a 53% reduction, driving the point home that it can be very, very instrumental having WASH programs central to preparedness to reduce the morbidity. Now, talking about COVID-19 and respiratory illnesses across the globe, it has been looked at, and there is immense effectiveness. And in fact, one of the groups right at the bottom, they went into looking at how often do we really need to wash our hands or decontaminate our hands to not get COVID. So what they came up with is they followed a bunch of volunteers. They found out that if you wash your hands 5 or more times in a day, the chances of your getting COVID go down dramatically. And things in the similar vein have actually been shown in other parts of the world that I mentioned in the first two rows here in Iraq and in the US. And these are just very few studies that I picked up. There are multiple case studies across the literature. So fair to say, effective WASH programs can have a huge impact on respiratory illness, including COVID-19. Now, if we pivot to diarrheal illnesses, again, there is a lot of evidence, and that's why on the left-hand panel, you see the results from multiple case studies, and this is a meta-analysis. Basically, if you put all the data together, you can see there's anywhere from 30 to 50% reduction in morbidity. And if you extrapolate these numbers to looking at the prevalence of diarrheal diseases, what you see in the right-hand column, we can actually prevent over 1 million lives if we have effective WASH programs across the globe. So having talked about the effectiveness, I think it's key also for us to recognize, and I'm sure the audience here is well versed with the fact that water and soap is more effective than simply water. And this group of authors wanted to prove this. So what they did was they took 20 volunteers and they had them swab their hands 24 times over a period of weeks. So you have around 480 observations. And across the studies, what they found out was when you do not wash your hands, when they swabbed the hands, there was 44% of the swabs had a high amount of bacteria in it. When you wash your hands only with water, it goes down to 22%. When you wash it with soap and water, it goes down to 8%. And this was statistically significant if you look at different pathogens also, like Enterococcus. So making the point, having effective WASH programs, you can really reduce the morbidity and mortality in respiratory illnesses and in diarrheal illness. So fair for us to question that, we are just coming out of this pandemic. What was the status of these programs when we went through this pandemic? And this was very nicely put together by a group of authors from various places, where they wanted to look at the robustness of WASH programs in all these countries. So they surveyed countries in, you can see, Central America, South America, some parts of Africa, the Middle East, and the Indian subcontinent. And they said, we're going to look at these 4 target areas. That is the population, population-wide initiatives, that would be our campaigns. Then they said, we'll also look at our infection prevention and control in all the household and in all the household setups and institutions. So for first 2 measures, as you can see, the compliance was okay. If you look at the right-hand column, it was anywhere from 50 to 70%, target 1 and target 2. As you go down from target 3 to target 5, you see our compliance going down with implementation. So for target 3, where they wanted to look at access to water and sanitation in all kinds of settings, including the vulnerable groups, it was relatively low. It was just around 35%. And when you look at continuity, affordability, and quality of water, it was further down, around 25%. And then when you look at technical and financial capacities, again, it's around 30%. So it's the last 3 metrics that haven't really been implemented. They wanted to dig deeper into it. So in each target area, there are certain measures, and they all amount to, if you add up all the measures, they're around 43 measures. So here they've tried to depict areas that had implemented all 43 measures. They are dark green. And as the number reduces, the green becomes lighter. Then you see some orange, yellow, and red. In all these areas, the programs, the measures that were implemented were 15 or lower. Where it's red, they were less than 5 measures implemented. So you can see across the globe, right? If you look at us as a global community, without a doubt, there are really areas where we can improve a lot more than where we are today. This is the same thing showing in a different way, where the top 3 target areas where we do okay, we did fine. There's a lot of green in the top panel, but when you look at the technical resources, the financial resources, the quality, and the affordability, there's a lot of yellow and orange in the bottom panels. So fair to say, right, that the WASH programs globally, they were suboptimal, more so in the target areas that we talked about, that is affordability, quality of water, and financial and technical capabilities. And, I think it would help us to think about it not only in terms of how we prepare for the next pandemic, but also, as you know, after the pandemic, there has been a change in pattern of how the viruses and bacteria interact with us. So what this graph shows here is that the viruses have really gone amok. You can see in 2021, the number of respiratory viruses circulating, you see that steep line, the dark blue line, it's essentially perpendicular. So there's been a huge increase. In addition, I think across the globe, you've heard about vaccinations lagging. Subsequently, we are seeing the upheaval in measles now. For instance, in the US, last year we had about 53 cases of measles. And now it's just been 3 months of the year. We are already up to 53 cases. Interestingly, what we saw with group A bacterial infections, they've become more invasive, for which now people have to be hospitalized. There have been anecdotes and case reports and case studies showcasing that. Why is this happening? Why has the epidemiology changed? So many of you may know or may have read, it's got to do with, we have a couple of hypotheses, let me put it that way. One hypothesis being that we were quarantined, we were isolating ourselves. So as a community, the level of immunity that we have in the community has perhaps gone down. Or another hypothesis is that with resources being limited, we put in a lot of resources towards surveillance and testing and PPE as it relates to COVID-19, and perhaps we did not invest as many resources to our vaccination campaigns. Having said all that, having effective watch programs will not only help us in preparing for the next pandemic, but also help us address the morbidity and the mortality that we face with the changing face of the epidemiology of bacteria and viruses as we come out of the pandemic. And really, you don't have to look too far. If you look at our outbreaks globally, the numbers have increased tremendously. In fact, in Africa, in some places, there's yellow fever that is researched now. And then there's Nipah virus not too far in Bangladesh, in Asia. And then MERS is again showing its face in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And in your neck of the woods in Nigeria, I updated these slides in February this year, end of February, and you can see there's, as you may know, there are outbreaks around Lassa fever and also around cholera that are ongoing. And I think the point I'm trying to make with all this is the commonality between all these outbreaks that we are talking about is that if we have extremely effective WASH programs globally, we can really make a huge impact in the morbidity. And like we've been saying, there's a huge burden of preventable morbidity, right, associated with infectious disease threats. And here I propose to you a framework as to how we can think about how to address the current situation and how to address our programs that we are standing up for pandemic preparedness and response. I think one of the big lessons that we've learned is that WASH programs are central to these programs. So if you look at the left-hand side, when you look at pandemic preparedness, right, we think about access to countermeasures, access to therapeutics, access to surveillance, access to testing. You can imagine if we have extremely robust WASH programs, the impact of the program in reducing morbidity and mortality will increase several fold if you have an effective WASH program as the core of these programs. In addition, whether it's a pandemic or just an outbreak or in an endemic setting, there's circulation of a contagious pathogen, we typically employ the measures that you see on the right-hand side, right? We use protective equipment, we use administrative controls and engineering controls. And all this is around PPE, ventilation, etc. Even in that, we always have WASH programs that are central. However, I think it's a good time for us to put WASH programs as central and integral to even a pandemic response or response to any pathogen. And I believe that our impact of these programs will go up several folds. With that, I'll stop and I'll hand it over back to Mike. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for the lessons learned from COVID, but really sort of practical common sense lessons to prevent all sorts of spreads of diseases. So thank you very much for that presentation, and we'll move on to the fourth and final speaker. I know we've got one question in the chat box, but please feel free to add some more if you can. And our fourth and final speaker is Ms. Asha Shaban. Ms. Shaban will be talking about addressing issues of corruption and mismanagement in the COVID response, focusing on water and protective equipment distribution. Over to you, Ms. Shaban. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. My name is Asha Shaban, as has been said, and I will be speaking on experiences from Kenya with regards to addressing issues of corruption and mismanagement in the COVID-19 response. And that I'll focus on water, which was this primary line of defense in terms of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the protective equipment distribution. And just to highlight that, just to give a little background about Kenya is that we have a devolved system of government. And one of the things is that we have 47 counties and as well as county governments, as well as one national government, making them 48 counties. 48 government, that is. And as a result of that devolution, the intention was actually to bring greater political equality and economic equity to the people. But nevertheless, the devolved system faced a lot of teething problems. That was way back in 2013. And there had been many challenges, including unclear defined structures. We had challenges around the roles. And with that said, that fact also brought about room for corruption. And one of the issues around water is that water resources is basically a national function. Water services is basically a county function, and that sort of has conflicting mandates with both devolved county government and as well as the national government. And that said, Kenya has one of the best policy and legislations in place. And I know the first speaker talked about legislation. I think it's common in all African countries. However, the implementation of an enforcement remains a challenge. And of course, when COVID-19 struck, it found a system that had no strong foundation. It found as exposed, and especially the Ministry of Health, to our underbellies. And the pandemic found a situation in Kenya where you found hospitals that had no beds, we had no ICU facilities, we had no protective equipment, and yet this was as a result of that devolved corruption. So the results were seen and made worse during the pandemic. They did not come during the pandemic. So one of the things was that we had the inability to implement those well-laid policies and legislation. And therefore, it found us in a position where we could not really, for instance, verify the supplies that were procured and ensure that they met those appropriate standards and quality. Then the other thing is that most of the institutions did not even have the capacity to procure. And that goes across almost all African countries. And the delivery of, we did not have a way of ensuring that the value for money. We did not have a way of ensuring that these supplies were delivered in an efficient and effective manner, or procured, that is. And we also have, due to that urgent nature of the pandemic, there was no appropriate controls in place to prevent or detect irregularities such as fraud. And there was no way to measure effectiveness in the distribution system management. There was no way of measuring that value for money. And this gave us room for corruption and mismanagement. And that included having unscrupulous business dealers. I'm sure around August, you heard about a certain really big tender that was awarded to one of the leading medical suppliers in Kenya. And the PPEs disappeared. Some of them were donated by philanthropists. They disappeared in the thin air. But that said, it's not all lost, because I would have loved to share my slide, but it's not all lost. And one of the things is that we need to look at is the issue was systemic. So how do we ensure that we do not go back to where we are? So part of what I'm speaking from a point of view of the civil society organizations, and part of what we are doing is that we are looking at how we can advocate for joint efforts by government in private sector, as well as us, the civil society organizations, to ensure that we curb corruption. And one of the things we have come up with is we'd been having advocacy programs that were aimed at increasing public participation to enhance awareness among citizens. That is through radio. We had radio programs where citizens were able to interact with the duty bearers, that is the government, and ask tough questions with regards to where is the money being spent at, what's happening in terms of water distribution, because at that point, water being, as I said, being central in management of COVID-19, had suffered the same fate as the procurement of the PPEs. So, and at this point, the government thought it wise to instruct all water utilities not to disconnect water bills water over unpaid bills. And of course, they did not give clear guidelines as to how the utilities were supposed to recover that cost of operation. And that still looms around the water companies to date. They've never been able to recover some of those costs, operation and maintenance costs, because they do that through billing the customers. And of course, we also had another team, another group of, and I mean, the government also authorized that water is given for free to those in informal settlements. And of course, that created a loophole in terms of unscrupulous water traders who would take in water for free, but they would actually go and sell it out. So there was no, that lack of clear guideline, the systems, and the fact that the whole situation was reactionary brought about a lot of loopholes for exploitation of the public. Then, so what we are doing is actually, what we were doing was actually building community networks that were actually able to go at those devolved systems of government and holding the duty bearers accountable and asking hard questions. And without capacity building, without the knowledge of the citizens, then they're not able to know how powerful they are in terms of holding the government accountable to some of those things. Then the other thing we need to do is political goodwill. As I said, we have very good legislation, we have very good laws, but how then do we ensure that we enforce and convict the corrupt individuals? Because we had, in Kenya, we had a case where we have cases where people are convicted of corruption. Even during the COVID period, we had a whole saga of COVID millionaires. Must have seen it on news. They were arrested, taken to court, but to date, they have never been convicted. So that waters down the efforts. So what we are doing as CESPAD and as other civil society organizations is just to hold these duty bearers accountable, to ensure that they invest in institutional strengthening for anti-corruption, especially anti-corruption institutions within the country, because they cannot be toothless dogs. We have to act, and water and wash being one of the main fundamental areas in terms of managing the pandemic. We need to find ourselves in a space where we are not caught off guard. We are not reacting, but we are proactive. Then one of the other things also is to ensure that we mainstream anti-corruption measures. And this we are doing by looking at policies around water issues and any other water related field, so that we start and slowly looking at how we mainstream anti-corruption measures with especially governments. And one of the areas we are working in, one of the counties in Makueni, they have really come up in terms of even using technology to reduce on, human footprint. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that humans get off, but I'm just looking at adoption of information technology to be able to increase accountability. And they have really done a good job. They are in open governance platforms, and you can actually see clearly how they procure items, where the water systems are distributed, how the situation is. Like there's a lot of accountability and transparency based on the interventions that we have been able to undertake. And the other thing is, as I finalize, is on the media, use of media. Nowadays, of course, with social media and mainstream media, we have really tried to push awareness and hold the duty bearers accountable through the use of media. And that we did a lot in 2020. And that was able to bring out some of that rot and ensuring that people are kept in check. And without really overemphasizing, we cannot have, yes, we might have all these systems in place, but how is our value system as a country? So we are looking at instilling value systems. Sometimes we talk about these big words, integrity, corruption, but even the little children in school, they do not probably if you ask someone what is integrity, they might not be able to really define it as is. So how do we ensure that as the little children grow, even as adults, when we talk about we are not receiving bribes, do we really understand what it means to have a value system as a country? Because even if you set up all these systems and you have the people behind the systems not having value systems, then we are doing zero work. We will keep on being caught unawares by such pandemics, and we need to learn. We also need to reflect take a break, reflect, and look at how then do we monitor these systems so that we can have, continuous public policy improvement to ensure openness and transparency, both at the local level of government and that at the national level of government, and see how that information then trickles down from the ground to the president, if need be. And that was really evident in Kenya during the pandemic. That's one thing I would really love to commend, that the coordination was very efficient. The turnaround time in terms of information flow was about an hour. It was able to reach from the time the president announces something or a policy is made at the policy level, all the way to the person in the village. That information will be was able to reach the people and be acted on. I will not really go into so much. I'll welcome questions, but we've done quite a lot in terms of mainstreaming, learning from the learnings of COVID-19 and ensuring that we curb corruption, because it's the cancer that is really eating the continent and stopping, water and wash from progressing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asha, for that interesting talk on corruption in Kenya during COVID. And unfortunately, that was reflected very much in our country as well. And similarly to yourself, not a single person's been convicted of any offences yet, despite billions of pounds disappearing into other people's pockets. So, yeah, for taxpayers, we'll pick that up. So we've had all our speakers. There's now an opportunity for questions. And I noticed that, and forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, Ide has a question for Rifkatu. Would you like to ask that question yourself, or would you prefer me to ask it? You can. You need to unmute your mic, Yue. Now, if not, I can ask it. It's, as I said, it's a question for Rifkatu, and it says, "Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Climate change isn't something we have power over." In fact, some people might want to challenge that, and its impact on water is quite concerning. You've mentioned ways to prevent this and create more knowledge about this. However, are there solutions we can steer and drive adoption by other organisations and ourselves? I know it's you where you've unmuted your mic now. Hopefully I've got your question right. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes, just to mention, thank you very much. Just to mention that what I meant to say was climate change isn't something we have power over at the moment. So, and I know its impact to water is quite concerning these days, but I just really want to know what solutions we can obviously just work on. I know there are so many ways to prevent this, but what are the solutions out there? What can we do to basically stop this and just work with other organizations or anyone who has the same passion in this field to sort of just stop it. I really want to hear from Miss Rifkatu. I hope I pronounced your name right though.
Yeah, you did good.
Thank you.
I usually don't get that first time, but you did good. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, over to you, Rifkatu.
I can take that. Just like Mike said, right? I am going to contest that there's nothing we can do about it, because climate change is primarily caused by human activities. We brought the climate to this state, truthfully speaking. And so I had mentioned some of the things we can do, but I'll add up some because I actually had them, but I decided to just, maybe because of time and all. But then I was talking sustainability at the end of my presentation. And then we have to start doing sustainable water management. Sustainable water management, improving water infrastructure, it must be a priority. And then we will talk about harvesting rainwater, and then smart agriculture. Smart agriculture, we have to start using solar-powered irrigation systems. Very, very important, because one of the major issues, climate change, one of the major stuff is greenhouse gases. emissions of greenhouse gases. So once we start using solar-powered irrigation system, solar power, let's think clean energy. Let's think clean energy and sustainability. And then another thing I have to highlight is we have to go back to our traditional means of organic manures. Very, very important, because most of the inorganic, most of the synthetic fertilizers we have, a lot of them contain like NPK, nitrous oxide is also a greenhouse gas. So using it on our farm is not healthy for our crops, it's not healthy for us, because they even, I was talking to someone and I was telling them to check out even the quality of the food we used to have. It has been tampered with the present quality. Because I was using sweet potato. I don't know if people have it over there. Growing up, I knew that my oh, sorry, my video has been off. Sorry, okay. So I knew that my mother could buy that and keep it for months, and it was still very okay. And then now I'm coming and I like to buy things in bulk and all, and then I'll keep it, and then a week later, it's all spoiled. I'm like, what is it? And that a whole lot of other food products like that. So, and it's because we have used these synthetic fertilizers, and they are not good for our soil, and they are not even good for our health because of some of the greenhouse gases that they have. And then when we start thinking smart, clean technology in all of our approaches, it will really, really help us. And then we talk about wastewater, reusing wastewater. Yeah, so that will help in our municipal waste purposes and all of that, and then it will even be used in industrial and all of that. And so those are some ways that, and then education, I'll always hammer on that. The last speaker spoke about that too, and then education is very important. We can never overemphasize that. That is the truth. And then we can also harness harnessing of groundwater and a whole lot of other solutions. But I think that'll be it for now. Thank you. I hope I answered your question, though.
Yuzi, thank you very much.
That's really great, Riffy. Some really practical answers there to what everybody can do. You know, we can all play our part in climate change. We don't have to throw our hands in the air and say, oh, there's nothing I can do. So thank you very much for that practical input. I've got a question here from, again, hopefully I've got your name right, Oluwatosin Adenle, and it's about engaging elementary school children in preservation of water. Could you unmute your microphone, please? And would you like to ask a question? I'm not sure if it's directed at any particular participant. That's great.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, you did pronounce my name correctly. Okay, so it's actually directed at the second speaker. So, I would just like to know, a handle on that question. How she want to, what direction she would like to take that question in terms of, regarding the education for elementary students. I'm not sure if you can hear me though.
Yeah, we can hear you. Do you mean the third speaker, Dr. Nanda?
Yes, please.
I guess Mr. Prince. Mr. Prince, the question is for Mr. Prince.
Oh, Mr. Prince, okay. Yeah. Mr. Prince, over to you.
Yeah, if I get, I will advise to adopt a model. When I was in primary school in the 80s, we had a visit from some ad hoc staffs of UNICEF, and they gave us about 4 postcards to stick in our houses. And each of the postcards had a message. One was, wash your hand after using the latrine. The second one said, wash your hand with soap and water. The third one said, teach children how to use the latrine. And the fourth one says, don't waste water. These things have stuck to my head over 30 years now, because these are pictures with messages. So we have to go back and use the same model to teach our primary school students, and possibly create wash clubs where they could have some debates and some talks about water usage. And believe me, these children will take the same message back to their parents at home when it comes to water resource management. So I will encourage us to adopt this pictorial system of messaging in teaching children in primary schools in aspect of water resource management. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for that simple approach to primary school children. There's a comment on here from Mekunwe Kidachukwu about sustainable water. Did you just want to make that out loud?
Yeah, I actually posted that because.
So you're breaking up a little bit.
Some, as an example, when I work on water resource. Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry, it's a network problem.
Okay, yeah, we can.
I like being very practical in my approach to water resource management. So I had posted that as we advocate for better sustainable water resource management or water facility management, we should drive this advocacy back and down to the urban planners and the urban developers to always encourage the inputs of environmentalists and water resource managers in their designs and in their construction of buildings and infrastructures in modern days, because we are experiencing, for instance, in Abuja, where there is heavy burden on groundwater, and Abuja is also developing very, very fast, and the urbanization is growing so fast. We are closing up the open space for rainwater infiltration and percolation. We are increasing flooding, yet groundwater is depleting. All this because water resource managers are not included in the design and in the construction of new cities and towns. So I'm advocating through this medium that we share this advocacy up to the policymakers, so that in terms of design and construction of engineering structures, new towns and cities, water resource managers and environmentalists should be part of the process from beginning to the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brent. There's a really great question here from Quentin Obina. Quentin, do you want to unmute your mic and ask this question of Dr. Nanda? I don't know if you can see it, Dr. Nanda. Basically, Quentin's asking the $64 million question. Do you think another pandemic is on the way?
That is $1 million question.
Dr. Nanda, are you able to answer that question?
I think Mike, I lost you somewhere, but I can read the question. If another pandemic is on the way. That's $1 million question. And I think another pandemic on the way, I think no crystal ball can even tell you if it is on the way. But what we know is that there will be another pandemic, the timing of which I think you can bet as much as you want, but nobody knows the answer. But there will be one. Whether it'll be in a year, or it'll not be in our lifetime, or it'll be in our children's lifetime, that's something we'll just find out with time.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned some of the other diseases, I believe, in the beginning of your presentation, but are starting to be of concern. So I think we can guarantee there will be more pandemics on the way. To whether or not we've learnt any lessons from the previous ones, we'll wait and see. That's all the questions I've got in the
There's one
chat,
more.
but
There's
we
one
do
more,
have,
Mike.
yeah, we do have time for another question if anybody's got one.
There's a question that, though it's a direct message, on how can we ensure that the equitable, wait, it's disappeared. Wait a minute.
I can read it. Yeah, I can see it. It's
You can
for
see
me, right? Yeah. If we do first, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's here. How can we ensure the equitable and transparent distribution of relief materials during the action?
Great. So one of the things is actually, of course, as Dr. Nada is saying, we should be bound for another pandemic. How then have we reflected on the risks around corruption for the previous pandemic and integrated some of those learnings within our systems? As it is, we need to look at our institutions as we do whoever is in charge of the distribution of relief materials. Are we already implementing the laid down structures that that ensure that there is equitable and transparent distribution of relief materials? Otherwise, then even if another pandemic comes, there'll still be issues around corruption. One of the things that we have, loopholes around is the issue of enforcement, because you find, yes, the people will raise the issues that, yes, we have caught this person, the materials are not being distributed with equitably, and it's not transparent, but then the story ends there. So we create room for more and more, pandemic looters, material looters, and we don't really sort out the issue. One of the things is to actually look at how is the system now? How are we effecting anti-corruption measures? How are we mainstreaming anti-corruption measures at all levels? Are citizens aware of their rights and responsibilities with regards to, what they are entitled to with regards to those materials? Then we are able to look at that transparency, equitable distribution. Then we also able to look at information. How does information trickle down from government to the people, or from the people to government? Those systems, if they're not strengthened, then we will talk about the same issue every other time a pandemic comes. And God forbid that the pandemic did not start here. Otherwise, we would be in a really bad shape. So it's about time that we take up lessons from what happened and strengthen those mapped out risk areas. Vera, I hope I've answered your question. If I've not, we can still have a chat.
One final question, and the answer will have to be fairly quick. It's for Dr. Nanda again, and the question is from you, Ide, again. If we do foresee another pandemic, and I think we've agreed that there will be one, are we prepared, and have we collected enough information to inform decisions to implement the right wash programs, not only for COVID, but for other diseases as well?
Yeah, so I think I tried to answer in the chat because I thought there won't be time. But I'll tell you, we definitely know what our gaps are. So that translates to the lessons, areas that we need to build on and put resources towards. And, there have been a lot of conversations, several forums and resources too, that have been put towards pandemic preparedness, okay, in creating programs. It's like someone said, you can have it on paper, you can have these plans. I think there are huge opportunities still in deploying these programs. Now, your question may be, how do you deploy them in the absence of an outbreak or in the absence of resurgence or a pandemic? I think the answer is in doing tabletop drills or doing mock drills, right? There are some institutions that do it, but it's not something that's hardwired, even in all health systems. We prepare for, in health systems, people prepare for earthquakes, people prepare for a fire, right? If we don't start thinking about pandemics with that lens, I think then we will never prepare. So my point is, we got to start thinking about it as one of the natural disasters, like we all prepare for. And then only we can take confidence in the fact that we've made most of the learnings that we garnered from the last pandemic.
Thank you, Dr. Nanda. That's really great. I think we've come to the end of our questions, and that's just on time. So I'd just like to finish really by giving a big thank you to all our excellent speakers today, to everyone who's attended the debate and the presentations, and to Ms. Uchechi Okonma and her team at PHAAE for organising what's been a very informative and interesting webinar. I'd just like to hand over to Uchechi now just to say a few words. Thank you, Uchechi.
Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Good. Thank you very much, Mike, for moderating this. And thank you, Dr. Nanda, Asha, Mr. Prince, Rifi, for a short notice. Thank you all for being here, for all the participants who came in here, even with the slight time change at the last minute. I'm really grateful that you're all here. Thank you to our volunteers, the technical team, Asma. I woke her up this Ramadan and she had to rest. I had to wake her up like, come on. I thank you, Asma, for your time, your dedication through all this. I thank you, Madi, who is not here, to Tosin, to all my volunteers, Rehab, and all the others who can be here. Thank you very much. Our website is there, www.phaae.org. I'll put it on the chat space. If you have anything you want to do with us, we can be your implementing partners. Please reach us. We can talk more on what we can do together in the future. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Uchechi. I'd like to think that this presentation's been a little bit like a swan. It looks very, very serene to look at, but under the water, under the surface, there's lots and lots of activity going on. So yeah, thank you very much for the organisation and everybody who's been involved in setting it up today. I hope that everybody who has attended has found something interesting, something useful, something practical that can be put into place in their own community, in their own country, in their own environment. So I'm going to sign off now, but thank you very much for everybody who's attended. Goodbye.
Thank you.